You're listening to Nonpartisan Hacks, the politics and policy podcast where we talk about good government from the local level on up. I'm Joel Grenz, a City of Parksville councillor.
And I'm Sean Wood, also a Parksville councillor and mayoral candidate. Today we've got a guest who's done something not many people can say. He's been a city councillor, a 3-term mayor, a regional district chair, an MLA, and now running to lead a provincial party. That's a full political bingo card.
Our guest is Peter Milobar, MLA for Kamloops Centre. Peter's career spans over 2 decades in public life, from the council table to the legislature, and we're going to dig into what he's learned along the way.
Before we get started, our usual disclaimer: the views on this podcast are our own and don't represent the City of Parksville.
Peter, welcome to Nonpartisan Hacks.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks so much for making some time, Peter. We know that the campaign trail, especially on the leadership race, is crazy, and we appreciate you making some time for us early this morning.
Yeah, no, it's always, I like doing podcasts. Longer form interview I tend to like a bit better, so this works well.
Right.
And the bonus is that if you come on this podcast as a guest, you get bread. Sean makes his, what do you call it again?
It's an organic white loaf, no knead recipe, but there's a little bit of flake salt on it. We'll see if we can get you some, Peter. I think maybe your campaign manager is eating it right now, but
yeah, he's my tester to make sure it's suitable for me to.
Yeah, it's right.
Yes.
The King's tester. Yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the coffee did not work out this morning. Sean's fancy coffee maker didn't.
No, I screwed it up.
Oh, that was you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's some big handle thing you have to pull down.
Yeah, it's a manual press. We don't have to talk about the Flair 58. It's very fancy, and they're not a sponsor of the show or anything. But I screwed it up.
Not when there's no coffee. They're definitely not a sponsor.
I had to serve Peter tea. I'm already embarrassed.
All good.
Apologies for the tea. We're doing British style today. So let's maybe get into your political career here. I think you first got elected when you're 32. Is that correct?
That's right, 2002. So there, I just gave away my age, I guess.
Oh,
but yeah.
Cat's out of the bag.
Yep.
So Kamloops City Councillor, and you became the city's longest serving mayor. If that's not...
That's true, and for a time there, everyone was telling me I was the youngest mayor ever when I got elected, but Al Thompson, who is still alive, was the first mayor of Kamloops when it amalgamated, and he promptly corrected me that he was a little bit younger than me when he, and fair enough, I'll give Al that. So Cliff Branchflower was close. He was a couple months shorter than me, but Kamloops has been one of those cities that's always kind of turn their mayors over fairly frequently. So even three terms is not that common in Kamloops either.
Well, I will admit that we have watched. So Sean and I like to watch other council meetings from other communities, and we have watched some Kamloops council meetings lately, and there's some interesting stuff there for sure.
And we're going to leave that one right there.
Yeah, we'll just
Peter. So since you're talking to a couple of councillors, we're big local government fans. I sit on committees for FCM. I've been on the board of UBCM. Local government runs balanced budgets. And kind of always trying to not get things downloaded onto them, and really appreciate the 3-term mayor thing because it's a relatively nonpartisan role. You're just managing a city with your city manager and your council. Can you tell us a little bit about what you look back on those 3 terms as mayor?
Yeah, I mean, in Kamloops, it's not a party system either. It's not like a Vancouver or a Surrey, so. We had pretty diverse councils, all 3 of them. It was almost like the public said, well, that was a pretty diverse group of people. Why don't we add one more diverse person into the mix to see how he handles that? So I had other people that ran for either federal or provincial NDP or Green Party on that council. In fact, a councillor and myself both ran in the 2017 election when he ran for the Greens in a different riding and I ran for BC Liberals at the time, and then we had another councillor around for the NDP. So we were always able to put all that aside, though, especially on the bigger structural things needed for the city. We definitely had long, dragged out debates, longer than I would have liked, around backyard chickens. He used to always say, look...
A deep ideological issue, for sure.
Yeah, and I would say, look, I don't want them in everybody's yard, but if you can convince 4 of your colleagues to get them, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it either, right? Like, I've got other things to worry about. And so I think that was really the key to it all. I came in 2008 when there was that economic meltdown happening around North America. So It really did require a council that was willing to look at doing things slightly differently. We were blessed that we had a very strong senior management that were on board with it as well. So the two together, we were able to find efficiencies. We were able to work with the QP staff to find out what they thought would make their workplaces more efficient and still deliver the services needed. And as a result, we added at a time when people were getting rid of firefighters and getting rid of downsizing police forces, letting critical infrastructure just kind of wait until things got better. I get criticized sometimes because I campaign talking about delivering our sewage treatment plant on, and in my first campaign, but we did that. And I think if you're in North Vancouver right now, you kind of wish someone had actually taken some control over that project. We did it on time and on budget. We actually hired firefighters. We expanded and built a whole new fire hall, added 20 more firefighters to our complement. We added to our police force. We added parks. We stuck to making sure the core infrastructure was taken care of. And we did all that over that 9-year period at under the rate of inflation on average. So, it can be done. It takes a lot of hard work, but it takes that ability to park the partisan stuff when you're at the council table and actually do truly focus in on what your job actually is. And that was elected to worry about the city, not worry about the province, not worry about the country, and not worry about what's going on, down in Tennessee or somewhere else in the world.
Are you throwing us a softball here, Peter, that you became mayor during the 2008, credit default swap crisis? Is there any similarities to the financial budget that we just heard the other day, and the province needing someone with that experience?
Yeah, I'm our finance critic. I have been for the last 3 years, and this is by far the worst budget I think anyone has seen in terms of record deficits, record debt going up, but also that inability to find or really spell out clearly exactly what those efficiencies you're looking for are or where they're going to come from. And I think ultimately that's what's concerning people, is that we know you're not going to solve a $13.5 billion deficit overnight. It should have never been allowed to grow that high, but it is what it is now. But spend the last year talking about how you're going to create a path and then not actually be able to show that path when you deliver the budget. I think that's the bigger concerning part. You can't just keep putting a number in a budget for next year that says things are going to get better without showing us the work. And last year they did the same thing. It showed that it was going to be a $10 billion deficit this year. Still bad, but better than it had been. And now we're back at 13.5. So seeing $10 billion next year's budget doesn't really mean anything to me, because the track record would say it's an irrelevant number. And you touched on it in the opening. Local governments have to operate without any deficit. And yes, they have debt, but they also have caps to that debt. They have to make sure that their debt doesn't exceed certain ratios for what they're able to borrow and reasonably pay back. And conveniently, the people that make the laws for municipalities, i.e. the provincial government, they make sure that they can just spend at will. And I don't think it's realistic to say a government would never run a deficit at a provincial level, but to not even attempt to stay away from it when local governments everywhere are forced to make very hard decisions on a yearly basis just seems a little strange to me, given the strength and the size of the public service and the expertise the province actually does have to tap on. It just seems almost in reverse of how it should be.
Well, you're throwing another softball here at us with being in local government. Speaking of the relationship between the provincial government and the local government, definitely in the 4 years we've been just about in office, we've seen lots of requirements put on local governments that make, especially for smaller communities like ours, put pressure on our community to be able to deliver things that are provincial priorities. Maybe you can speak a little bit about your experience of that sort of thing from both sides, being at the provincial level and at the local level. Have you seen that, or how do you contend with that, and what would your approach be on that?
I think back to my time, and this would be more related to when I was chair of the regional district, but still, it was the same what we had to do with the sewage treatment plant. We had to wait. We waited a little while to make sure we were waiting for the new federal discharge regulations. I know I'm getting a little granular, but this is for elected officials, so they'll get it.
Yep.
And that gave us the time to find an infrastructure program to apply to be able to pull in, $14 million of grants. And even then, the government wanted to have this artificial, well, we're back to one-third funding, which is a pipe dream now. And so we had to actually pull off a component of the project and resubmit, because they let it be known that they could probably find $14 million for us, but it was a $42 million plant. So we found half of the cost, and suddenly they could do one-third on $21 million of it. I didn't care. I just wanted the $14 million out of the 42. It didn't matter to me what percentages. But the point being, there was always an infrastructure program to tap into. It was always oversubscribed, but there was always a federal, provincial shared infrastructure pot to get into. And right now, we don't have that. So when the government says, well, when Eby became premier, he said, well, I just gave the cities $1 billion. Yeah, that was the only infrastructure money in the 5 years leading up to that, and there's been nothing since. And so, of course, people are having a harder time getting infrastructure projects done. So when I was chair of the regional district, we had gone in, and same thing, the water program was oversubscribed about 8 to 1. We put down our list of 10 projects, and the minister said at UBCM, pushed the sheet back, said, thank you very much. Go back and prioritize this list and talk to us. And I said, push the paper back. I said, thank you. This is our list. And she said, no, but you need to prioritize this. I said, we have. And I said, and we'll get you the minutes of the meeting, but it was a unanimous vote. And this is a board of 26, 10 electoral area directors, and then a mix of municipal directors. And I said, this has been prioritized by the board unanimously. And one of our smaller water systems at the top, there was a medium-sized one in the middle. Like they were all over the map. There was no rhyme or reason to the size that the minister could figure out why we had prioritized them this way. So we kept bugging them year over year, and it took about 2.5 years. And at a time when every other regional district was fighting over their priority list on a fund that was 8 to 1 oversubscribed, we got all 10 funded. Because no one else could actually say with certainty which projects they wanted to happen or not. So that's when you're able to pull people together and work together and see the bigger picture. It sometimes takes a little bit longer, but on the aggregate, it's still way faster, and you can still get projects done. But the key to all of that is you actually needed the infrastructure program in place to actually apply to, and those have not existed for the whole time at NDP, but even federally, they've not created those, and they need to get back to doing that to leverage those 3 levels of government's dollars to make projects actually happen.
There are two sides of that then in terms of making that work. One is having that pot that people can subscribe to or apply to. And then the other side is actually at the local government level or the regional district you're talking in this case, having consensus and an agreement about how to move forward pretty quickly. So how do you even get to that? And I can see that being an issue looking at maybe how caucuses operate as well, as how do you get a caucus all around the same idea and priority list?
You actually just make a bloody decision. That's how you do it, right? You have a conversation. You make sure people have access to the information. You basically make sure the group understands when a decision is needed by, and then you stick to it. And me mulling over technical reports for an extra 10 days is not going to change the technical report. It just gives me time to dither, second guess. Frankly, if I'm not trying to besmirch anyone in local government, but let's be honest, most people are going to read that package the day before, if you're lucky. A lot won't even have read it until they're sitting at the table talking about it. That's the reality of local government. People are busy, and if it's not a priority issue or topic area for them or a passion for them, they're not necessarily going to scrutinize it heavily. So dragging a decision out doesn't actually change the timeline of the decision making. It just drags out when you're actually going to get to that decision making, if that makes sense. So I've always found that's the best way, and that's what I find in Caucus. We have conversations around issues and topics. We share ideas. We figure out how we want to vote on something. and then we set that direction. And because of the pace of Victoria when you're actually in session, the timeline piece kind of takes care of itself, because you just literally don't have the time, and you don't control the time when you're in opposition. The government controls when a bill comes forward for debate, when the votes happen. So you're really at the mercy of what the government tells you is going to happen in the schedule versus what you might like to do.
Maybe before we switch to a different topic, you can give a little bit of your perspective on what you maybe wish you had known before you ran, and advice you may have for folks thinking of running for local government. We want to get the best possible local government people here in the province. So how do we get that?
Well, so I didn't give it a whole lot of thought before I ran. I was watching my son's preschool soccer in the morning, and they came out with the list of candidates on the radio in the morning broadcast at around 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And I was like, oh, geez, I think I might have to do my civic duty. And phoned my wife, and she says, well, you should do it. And I said, well, we'll see. So we stopped by City Hall just before noon, and I made her go in to get the paperwork because I didn't want to go in. My family was reasonably well known, and a lot of people in City Hall would have known, and I didn't want to trigger anything that way in case I decided not to run. And maybe that was a little bit self-arrogant on my part, given at the time, but, in your mind, you're thinking everybody knows who you are. Mm-hmm. And
I'm famous in my own mind.
Exactly, right? So anyways, I took out the paperwork, and then it was about 3:45, and we were sitting in the parking lot at City Hall till that same day, because it was the last day of nominations, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to take it in. And she goes, you get in there and do that. You know you want to do it. So my wife kind of gave me the last nudge. So literally, I was a day of... maybe I should do this. Actually, I had to leave town for a week or two for work right after that. So I was missing for the first part of the campaign, and was fortunate enough to get myself elected on the first try, and realized I had a skill set that was well positioned for the job. I was able to get a lot of big stuff done. I was fortunate the mayor at the time, Mel Rothenberger, had put me on a lot of fairly major committees. So I chaired our tournament capital committee, and in the first 9 months, we went to a successful referendum to build out all our sports facilities in Kamloops. He put me on the arts commission, and we had to redo our arts and culture heritage plan that we're still working off of today. I was on the social planning council, had to redo the social plan for the city at the same time. So that was my first 9 months. So frankly, when I hear local electeds say it takes a couple of years on the learning curve, I'm like, well, my first 9 months was pretty busy.
In your case, you had the history already, so maybe that helped get you elected.
Yeah,
and
a little bit.
Frankly,
I had family name recognition. Right, and I've said this to other candidates that run. If you have that, you will get votes because people know who your parents are, or your siblings, or whoever. But whether you get reelected or not is 100% on you at that point, because people will be willing to give you a chance because they say, his dad was a pretty rational thinker and pretty pragmatic. I bet you he's the same way. Let's see, because there's 9 of us, right? So it's not a massive gamble. But whether or not you get reelected, at that point they're judging you on you, and so it's sometimes how do you get a seat at the table? It's no different in provincial politics. Sometimes if you win a nomination in a riding, it doesn't matter what political stripe. If that's the political flavor of that riding, the old saying, you could run a fence post. Right, that's the same thing. So I don't apologize for that. That's a simple reality. I have been reelected 7 times, so I've been in 8 general elections. I've been elected 8 times. I think at a certain point I can say it's on my own merit.
Could be your own name now.
Yeah. So I mean, there's all of that. But what
about the skills though, like that you brought? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what I see happen in most municipal elections is candidates get too hung up on promising or talking about a specific project as the sole reason that they're running. And if you're only running because of a project, you probably shouldn't run, because projects come and go, issues come and go. I firmly believe that the electorate really looks for your thought process. We're all lay people at that table, right? I'm not a city planner. I don't have degrees in sewage engineering, and you're there for...
I mean, I dabble a bit on the side. But
you're there to ask the right questions. of the experts that you've brought in the room that did go to school for planning and all those types of things. And you're there to demonstrate and convey back to the staff and drill through the report and question the reports and the recommendations. Key being recommendation. Everyone says, oh, you just rubber stamp things. So it's a recommendation. Doesn't mean you have to do it. And so I think the public wants to know and looks for people that they feel will actually represent and ask the questions that they're asking when they're back when you watched it on Shaw Live, sitting at home watching it, right, and going, oh, well, why aren't they asking this question? And then some councillor asks that question, and then that person, you've instantly almost connected with that constituent because unwittingly you literally asked the question they were thinking. So I think it's more important that you get out there, you know, a bit of your personality, obviously, but more how will you handle situations and topics and issues that come up? Not, you know, there's always going to be the flashpoint topic that you need to have a stand on in an election. I get that for a project, but if you think that's the sole thing, I always say, and it's like this in the provincial leadership race right now. Okay. We all say that we're going to repeal DRIPA as an example. Great. We've done that on day one. Now what are you going to do to run the rest of the province? Like it is a critically important topic, but I would argue so is healthcare, so is education, so is the overall economy.
Or things we don't even know yet are going to come up.
So it's great to have a firm position on a issue, but that issue will come and go. And then what do you have, you know, as a thought process on all those other things that are going to come up? And basically, how would you handle it, or how would you approach those things? And the councillors that I saw that had the most success for years, Pat Wallace, a good friend of mine, she was elected forever in Kamloops, right? And she was president of SCM and president of UBCM. She did it all. But she was always consistent. People knew what she was standing for when they voted for her. Right, and she didn't overly waver a whole lot. She wasn't all over the map, and she had, you know, she was a BC Liberal SoCred, you know, free enterpriser, and she would have a lot of people that voted NDP provincially would still vote for her as a city councillor because they knew what they were going to get from her. And at the local level, I think people just want to know what's the value proposition I'm getting out of this person, basically, right? So.
That makes me think of provincially, Peter, that, you know, we didn't see our closest trading partner go in a certain direction. But since you don't have that financial pillow to be able to kind of roll with tariffs and whatever else came our way, well, then you're going to point to that being the problem. But they weren't ready for that problem, which speaks to your point where, hey, you know, you don't know what's coming down the road, so be prepared, you know, financially or however it might be.
Yeah, and if anyone thinks, I mean, it definitely was a shock to the system what's happened over the last year with the United States. But if anyone thinks that it's just going to be dialed back if you change who's in office down in the States, you're kidding yourself. If you think, what does anyone honestly think that a Democrat's going to run and say, you know what, I think we should shut back down that auto plant and move it back up to Canada? Democrats are typically more protectionist than Republicans. So now that door's been opened for the Americans to kind of rally around that protectionism, I'm hard-pressed to see where any government is, Democrat or Republican, is going to meaningfully, you know, at least very publicly dial it back. You might be able to do through negotiation of trade deals, but it's forever changed. And you know, even things like the duties on the softwood. And let's remember that it was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris that actually had laid out that schedule of ever increasing duties. The current president just decided to continue on with that trajectory. We as a country, I think, take for granted or think sometimes that other countries are going to play nice in the sandbox like we try to, and they just don't, right? Not just the States, but China and other trading partners too, right? They take the gloves off and they protect their own very, very well, very quickly, and as a priority.
So as a province, then, that behooves us to have plan A, plan B, plan C in order to be able to absorb any blows that come our way, I think is kind of what you're getting at there, Sean.
Yeah.
And with the budget being the way it is, we're in a tricky position now because we're kind of behind the eight ball fiscally. What are your plans for that? Should you get into the position to be able to do something about it, how would you tackle that?
Yeah, I've been asked since the budget came out by the media a few times, what have you done differently? And I'm like, well, first off, I wouldn't have created a $13.5 billion deficit. And you can't ask me how am I going to fix everything on day one when it's taken them 9 years to create the mess we're in. So
how do you eat an elephant?
Well, yeah, and so I think it's about taking those steps, and it's a culmination of things that needs to happen, right? You need to actually, as a province, strive to grow our GDP growth higher than what the economists are even projecting it to be, and take them by surprise and actually exceed expectations, not accept mediocrity, not say, well, we almost hit what people projected a year ago we were going to do, so I guess that's okay. I come from a competitive sporting background. I believe you strive, you keep striving and striving, and if you're a little bit ahead, get further ahead. If you're a little bit behind, figure out a way to tie things up and get ahead. And I've always just believed that. So I don't see that happening with this budget. I don't see it happening with this government year over year over year. And that's where you think if they had just had a little bit of ambition as a government to actually exceed GDP targets over the 9 years they've been government, how different our books would look right now. It would be a massive change, and household incomes would be that much higher, and people would not be as freaked out. And so the fact they're not even attempting that, and nothing clearer than in the forest industry. They have managed decline year over year over year. They're not doing anything the industry's asking or unions are asking. They can't, they project they're going to collect $500 million in fees and revenue from forestry, and then they collect $500 million, even though only 3 years ago they were collecting $1.8 billion. Not even attempting to get it up to $700 million, or attempting to get it, like that's the problem. How do you grow an economy? And I said this yesterday in my budget response. If you have just lost 15,000 forest sector jobs, it's great to say we're going to grow the economy by going after our natural resource strength. But that means you need to create 15,000 mining jobs to replace the 15,000 forestry jobs just to get to even. Mm-hmm. And so it's great to run around and talk about an announcement of this mine or that mine, and those are all wonderful and needed. But that only actually increases our economy if it's net new to the economy, not just a transferring of which work site somebody happens to be working at.
Being able to do that, whether at the local government or the provincial government, requires a collaboration between the elected side and the staff side. I have zero experience on the provincial side, but have seen now how that can kind of work between the staff and the elected board, so to speak, of the local government that's working with the staff. How do you get those results, and what have you seen in terms of the approach of this provincial government versus maybe what you've taken from working in local government with that staff to elected relationship?
Yeah, I've always found that the public service is very professional. They take a lot of pride in their jobs, and they want to do a good job. I don't think they go to work hoping that they have an inbox of angry emails from the public and how can I make someone's life miserable today? I don't think that's the driving force behind people that got into public service in the first place, right? And it doesn't matter what job you do. I don't think people that take your admission fee at the local swimming pool are going, how can I make this line longer today so people are really angry when they get up here with their kid to get into the pool, right? If you start from that starting point, you realize it's like any other workforce. So there are those that are just marking time and not, but you go to a grocery store and there's an employee that's doing that too, right? So I think sometimes that you got to cut through that. And once you establish that we're all here for the same thing and want a shared goal, that starts to help cut into that whole public sector versus elected official kind of dynamic. But then you need to have strength both in the mayor's chair, but around the council table, and you need to have strength in the premier's office and around the cabinet table, so that those deputy ministers or CAOs they have a level of respect that you find that working relationship that you can push each other a little bit in the right appropriate setting. I had many a very loud conversation with the two CAOs that I had at the city at the time. throughout the years, but they were always in a closed office door and not in front of all of council or not. And we would hash things out in a adult kind of way where we were just going back and forth and, you know, voices rise or whatever. It's not that we were ever angry with each other. It was just
passionate for what you want.
Yeah, or trying to press your point, right? I mean, and so it's that time and place piece. It's also having councils that know their place. And I'm not trying to, again, be disrespectful of councils, but I've ran for both positions. They are completely different. They just are. And even down to the pit in my stomach, I was so first time I ran for city council, I came in 8th of 8. Second time I was 4th. Then I ran for mayor. And very popular, well known. It was assumed I would do good in the mayor's race. Even that, putting in my paperwork where you're filing paperwork where there's no safety net. It's not, well, if I come in 3rd, I'm still fine. It's a pit in your stomach. Like, what did I just do to my political life, right?
Yeah.
I had a nice, comfortable gig at the
Sean's
city
getting
council
nervous
table.
Now you're telling me, Peter.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good.
No, but it's true, right? And then the same happens if you run provincially, right? That's happening a little less extent for me in the leadership race because I'm still an MLA, whether I become leader or not. I'm still an MLA, and I can still do the job for my constituents and everything else. But it is a different role. It is a different job. What I've noticed over the time that I've left is that, and this is across the province, is there seems to be a lot of cities and towns that have city councils that are trying to make city council work a full-time job. And it's not. And I think that's where the problems start is councillors getting too ingrained in trying to direct staffed operations, constantly following up on things, getting too into the weeds with a constituent issue instead of the person who phoned about the tree branch hanging low over their sidewalk. Instead of just passing that on to Public Works and getting someone to take care of it, they're wanting to know from Public Works when it's going to be taken care of, and then the councilor's showing up on the sidewalk,
and jumping in with their hedge trimmers and
to put on their white hat and be the site supervisor of the job. And like, I'm over dramatic, I guess, but that's what I'm finding is that people are feeling. I think it's because of access on phones and accessibility of the public. So I understand where it's coming from in a way, that feeling of pressure, like I always have to be on, I always have to demonstrate, but it actually it does create problems in a system that's not really designed for that. And it creates confusion in the public service in a municipality because then they're like, well, who am I actually answering to? And if it's not firmly the mayor, who should be speaking on behalf of all of council, and I did that. There was things I didn't agree with the council was doing, but I would still defend it after the fact because they won the vote. I would make sure staff were still following through on those instructions and those directions, and so that built me credibility within the council that they could stay part-time because they trusted that I was following through on what their wishes were as well. So I think there's always that balance of just trying to make sure that things are.
Well, you have to be kind of removed almost as a counselor. Like you don't want to be right in the day-to-day because you're supposed to be providing some of that reflective perspective at the table, as opposed to, I'm out there doing the thing all the time and, trimming the hedges or whatever it is, customer service style calls.
And again, I do think our phones have, and technology has played a large part in that. So when I started in 2002, the controversy within council horseshoe was half of council was not wanting and refused to use an electronic calendar. And so they still wanted stuff written down in day timers and everything else. We had big controversy over our technology allowance of whether or not the city would help pay for our cell phone bill or should we have a laptop or not. I mean, that was literally couple years worth of discussion. Yeah. By the time I left in 2017, I mean, I was probably getting upwards of 100 emails a day as the mayor, right? And so, and as an MLA, it's kind of similar. So it's like I say, I do understand it. I'm not saying it to try to be a jerk about it, but but the system is not designed. And so it's like if you're running for council or want to be a really effective council and have staff kind of liking to work with you, frankly, and help, stay out of their way, like direct them and guide them at the council table and make sure that that's being followed up on through the CAO. But then kind of get out of the way and do what city councillors are and should be good at. Show up to ribbon cuttings, show up to every community event known to man, and get your name and your face out that way, and talk to people on the ground in the community, and then let you're supposed to be, that's what you're supposed to be doing. It's not meant to be the parks worker out at that community event. It's meant to be you. Let the parks worker deal with the issue in the park that you brought forward 2 days earlier, and you go deal with the community group in general. Right? So.
Yeah. Well, you've been very generous with your time. Appreciate you squeezing us in. I know you've got a media hit to do here soon, so maybe we can wrap up the conversation with an opportunity for you to, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the role of nonpartisan spaces, given the polarized political landscape we're in right now. Council is supposed to be one of those areas. How do we get better decision-making by putting aside some of these partisan fights that we see all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I did not own a party membership in any party, federally or provincially, until I decided to run provincially. And so I bought my membership in 2016 as a BC Liberal to run in the nomination, because I wanted to be able to legitimately say to people, yes, I obviously have my leanings. The NDP didn't invite me to very many, they never invited me to their fundraisers. I was invited to other fundraisers, and you say, well, I'll go to where I'm invited if my calendar works, right? And so I think there is that space, and I especially in communities the size of Parksville and Nanaimo and communities like Kamloops, the partisanship, I think, does a disservice at the local level. It's not, they aren't big enough cities. It's kind of like they're also not big enough cities to have full-time city councillors, right? You're not Surrey. You're not Vancouver. And so your populations don't necessitate that. The needs don't necessitate that. And it doesn't necessitate having the partisanship seep in. It doesn't mean you don't have, like I say, everyone knew the councillors that were green, quite literally green, and ran for the Greens. Like you can do that. We had councillors that ran federally for various parties and then come back to the council table. I guess I'm tipping off who around the council table ever actually made the leap to the next level was one person sitting here today. So, and that was just, some of that is just timing of which party they ran for in the wrong cycle or whatever, right? It wasn't that they wouldn't have been good representatives at that other level. But so we were always able to kind of let people go off and do their thing and then come back to the council table. And I think it's incumbent on those that are even a little more partisan in their off hours to kind of take a beat and take a step back when they get to the council table and say, that's not what I'm here for today, right? I'm not here to praise the government unnecessarily. I'm not here to just take shots for the sake of taking shots. Leonard Krogh would be a good example of that.
Right.
He has been pretty pointed, one of the more pointed critics of things that the government is doing, especially around addictions and public safety, crime and safety, and all of that. But he's also, at times worked with the government. So you got to kind of, again, know your lane and stay in your lane. I'm a big fan of that, right? I'm not a fan of provincial politicians that go running off out of their lane. We have very strong and capable MPs in BC. Both parties, they can go to Ottawa and fight the fight in Ottawa. Right? You don't need MLAs fighting the Ottawa fight. You don't need MLAs that wake up and see that something happened in Arkansas this morning, and so it's coming to BC for sure tomorrow, and suddenly it's the topic of the day because they saw something on a social media feed, right? From some publication somewhere, a left or a right-wing publication, doesn't really matter, right? It's like, well, what relevance does that have to do with what you're doing? What relevance would that have at the council table? And I actually had a media guy that would phone me up every morning around 6:30 and for his morning show and say, so this town, and it was always somewhere in the States, just past this, do you think Kamloops would ever do that? And finally I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. And he said, what? I said, because you're phoning me, you're asking me about something that council has never even remotely talked about. And then it gets torqued as if we are suddenly contemplating it because the mayor has just made comment about, so I just stopped doing it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the aha moment for me of like, why are we getting caught up in stuff that has never even been in quiet conversation with councillors talked about on the media, right? So I think there are ways, bottom line is, sorry, I ramble a lot. It's, as I say to people, it's genetic. I get it from my mother. So, there is ways to keep that nonpartisanship out of it while still being true to what your political beliefs are, right? But whether or not you need to rebuild a road really isn't a partisan issue. I really don't care how you vote, federally or provincially. Is the road in disrepair? Does it need to be replaced? Maybe you get a little more aggressive on the lobbying for dollars or whatever, but at a certain point you either agree that it stays in the capital plan or you don't. Like, what does provincial or federal politics have to do with that, right? Or whether park benches should be made out of composite material or wood. Okay, maybe there's an argument if you're in the Green Party that there's a little bit more heft to your argument one way or the other, but ultimately that's still not a partisan. And that's at its core what you're running for at local government. So I guess the final word I'd say to people is if you're running for local government to try to change how the province operates or try to change how even your neighboring community operates or the federal government operates, you're running for the wrong level of government, right? And if you're running provincially to deal with Bill C whatever federally, run to be an MP because you're running for the wrong level of government. Like, I think that's partly what we get caught up in is your inboxes are probably the same people screaming and yelling at you about something the province has done. And then mayors and councils start trying to solve the provincial problem.
Yeah, all the time.
Instead of just saying, well, go talk to your MLA.
Yeah.
Right? I used to say that to people all the time in the mayor's office. Well, you better go talk to the MLA. I'm not trying to pass the buck, but that's who you need to talk to. Ironically enough, my first 5 meetings as an MLA were people I'd sent to that MLA's office, but as the mayor. But
you just switched your hat. Yeah. And you're like, you can talk to me now.
Yes, but it was an appropriate conversation then.
Yeah.
Then I actually had the ability to try to do something for them, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm driving at is that people just really do. I'm a huge fan of understanding what it is you're actually running for. And then sticking to the lane of what that is. And again, that doesn't mean I didn't hold the government to account. I had BC Liberal governments the whole time I was there. But it didn't mean that I didn't push back when we needed things like the hospital expansion or other issues. And so you can do both, right? It's not like they said I couldn't run for them because I was, doing my job.
Yeah.
I was doing my job. Right. I remember getting Todd Stone asked me, how come you sent me a letter about the ferries to Bella Coola? And I'm like, well, because council wanted that done.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, how did that even come up? And I'm like, I don't know. The communities were sending letters to everybody asking for support. Council said we should send a letter of support. And he says, but why would you still send it? I said, because the majority on council said, we are sending a letter, and the mayor at that point sends the letter. Yeah. Right. And once even some people in the provincial government started to understand how the process worked, they went, oh, okay, that's fair enough, right? Like you're doing your job. It's not a personal thing. It's just, that's how the system is set up.
Peter, as we wrap up, I really appreciate you making some time for us. I was down for the budget, and you're a heck of a finance critic when you stood up after finance minister stood up. And, from local government where the Municipal Finance Authority ranks municipalities with an amazing credit rating because we're given rules that kind of provide excellent governance where you can kind of be hands off and we just run balanced budgets. Really appreciate your feedback to the government about their own budget and all the very best in your leadership race. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. And good luck on the mayoral aspirations.
Thank you.
It is a great job. The mayor is the only head of elected government in Canada people directly vote for. When you think about it, you don't vote directly for premier, you don't vote directly for prime minister. And it's also, and I learned this as I traveled the world as the mayor, it's also the only title that every every nationality understands.
Sure.
Because
Right.
premier in different countries
Yeah.
means different things,
Sure.
or president does, or whatever, right? Whatever title of the head of that government is, governor, all that. But mayor is a mayor is a mayor. Everyone understands what that is that you do. So it is a very unique position, and it's a lot of fun, and good luck on city council as well.
Oh, thank you.
But the mayor gig is a very unique and special role that is for a lot of those types of reasons. Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate you coming on. For our listeners, you can follow Peter's work as MLA for Kamloops Centre and keep up on the BC Conservative leadership race, which wraps up on May 30th, I believe.
Yes.
And with that, we'll call it a wrap on this episode of Nonpartisan Hacks.
Peter, thanks so much. We'd love to chat more, but you're a busy guy in this leadership race, so thank you again for making time for us.
You bet. Thank you.
Until next time, take care of yourself and your community.